This story is a personal account. All events are described from my perspective and reflect my personal experience and feelings. This video does not state proven facts or legal conclusions. Names and details have been changed to protect a child and respect ongoing legal processes. People always ask the same question. Why didn't you leave earlier? They never ask what it costs to leave, what happens after you do, or what it feels like when the person you're afraid of has the legal right to take your child. This is not a story about divorce. It's not a story about drama. It's a story about control, fear, and the moment a mother realizes that silence is no longer an option. From the outside, we looked like a normal family. We had photos people liked, birthdays, holidays, smiles, a husband, a child, a routine that didn't raise questions. I wasn't unhappy in an obvious way. There were no daily screams, no constant chaos. And that's why it took me so long to understand what was really happening. Because abuse doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it comes dressed as patience, as excuses, as hope. When I think back, the problem didn't start suddenly. It crept in quietly. At first it was just stress. At least that's what I told myself. Then it became a pattern. Promises to stop. Apologies. Declarations of love. I believed them, not because I was naive, but because I wanted to protect the idea of a family. When our child was born, I hoped responsibility would change things. People say children fix relationships. They don't. They reveal them. I didn't stay because I was weak. I stayed because I was trying. Trying to help. Trying to understand. Trying to keep the family together. You tell yourself, it's temporary. It will pass. I can handle this. And slowly, without noticing, you start adjusting yourself instead of the situation. Lowering expectations. Avoiding conflict. Explaining behavior that should never need explaining. There is always a line. Everyone has one. The tragedy is that sometimes you only realize where it is after it's crossed. For me, that moment happened in front of my child. I won't describe it in detail. Some moments don't need details to be understood. What matters is what I felt immediately after. Not anger. Not shock. Clarity. The kind of clarity that doesn't argue with you. That night, I didn't scream. I didn't threaten. I didn't announce anything. I packed quietly. Because when you leave for safety, you don't perform it. You just go. The strange part? He didn't even notice at first. I went where I had support. To family. To a smaller city. To a place where I wasn't alone. Not to hide. To breathe. My child adapted faster than I did. He made friends. He slept better. He laughed again. I allowed communication. Calls. Visits. I believed cooperation would keep things calm. I was wrong. People think conflicts about money are about greed. They're not. They're about power. Support became conditional. Live where I say. Follow my rules. Give up your independence. I refused. And that refusal changed everything. I believed systems would protect us. Courts. Rules. Documents. There was a decision. Clear. Temporary. Legal. My child was to stay with me. I thought that meant safety. I was wrong again. The day my child didn't come back felt unreal. A public place. A casual moment. And suddenly, my child was gone. No explanation. No consent. I remember calling for help. And realizing how slow everything moved. How calm people sounded. While my world was collapsing. When you realize your child is gone, your body reacts before your mind does. Your hands shake. Your voice disappears. I called everyone I was supposed to call. Police. Authorities. Anyone who could help. And I learned something terrifying that day. Help has conditions. I kept hearing the same sentence over and over. He's the father. As if that erased everything else. As if context didn't matter. As if fear had an expiration date. Waiting is its own form of torture. Minutes stretch. Hours dissolve. I didn't know where my child was sleeping. I didn't know who was with him. I didn't know what he was being told. I begged for information. I wasn't asking for favors. I was asking for my child. But systems don't run on urgency. They run on procedures. I was told not to worry. I was told everything was under control. I was told that a video message was enough proof of safety. Imagine hearing your child's voice without knowing if you'll see him again. That's not reassurance. That's cruelty disguised as calm. At some point, you understand that no one is coming fast enough. So you start searching yourself. You call friends, relatives, anyone who might have seen something. You replay every conversation, every detail. You don't sleep. Because sleep feels irresponsible. When your child is missing. I realized I had one narrow window. If I didn't act, I might lose my child completely. I decided to move. To go where I could at least block one possibility. Leaving the country. That decision wasn't brave. It was desperate. Life doesn't warn you before moments like this. A train station. People passing by. Normal noise. And then, recognition. I saw them. My child. The person who took him. Someone else standing nearby. For a moment, everything slowed down. Then instinct took over. I reached for my child. Not aggressively. Not violently. Instinctively. Because that's what mothers do. What followed wasn't a discussion. It was chaos. Voices raised. Bodies moving. Fear flooding the space. My father stepped in. Not to fight. To protect. And that's when everything crossed another line. What happened next happened fast. Too fast. There was pushing. There was pain. There were people shouting. I remember strangers stepping in. Strangers. People who didn't know us. but understood immediately that something was very wrong. My father didn't stand up. I remember that moment clearly. The sound changes. When someone gets seriously hurt, it becomes quiet. In a way that makes your chest tighten. Someone called for help. Someone else shielded us. My child was crying. And that sound is something I will never forget. By the time authorities arrived, the damage was already done. There were questions. There were notes taken. But no real resolution. I watched adults discuss my child. Like a document. Like a case. Like an object. What should have happened that night didn't. Instead of separation, instead of safety, there was confusion, pressure, and a decision that ignored visible aggression. I realized something then. Sometimes the system doesn't fail loudly. Sometimes it simply shrugs. I didn't feel safe. So I left again. Not permanently. Not dramatically. For survival. I didn't announce where we were going. I didn't explain. Because explanations can be used against you. My father went to the hospital. Words like concussion and trauma entered our vocabulary. Paperwork followed. Reports. Statements. Documents. I learned how pain gets translated into files. My child changed. Not overnight. Gradually. He stopped sleeping deeply. He became quieter. Loud noises startled him. Sudden movements froze him. Doctors used careful language. Stress response. Anxiety. Adjustment. I used simpler words. Fear. I wanted to believe it was over. That once we were home, once the doors were locked, we would be safe. But safety isn't a location. It's a condition. And that condition didn't exist yet. I had tried everything quietly. Cooperation. Privacy. Legal routes. None of it stopped escalation. And that's when I understood. Silence wasn't protecting my child. It was protecting someone else. Speaking publicly is terrifying. Not because you're lying. Because you're telling the truth. Without knowing who will twist it. But fear had already taken enough from us. I wasn't willing to give it silence too. After everything that happened, life didn't return to normal. It became calculated. I started noticing exits. Memorizing routes. Listening for sounds at night. Not because I wanted to live in fear. But because fear had already proven useful. People misunderstand this part. They think fear makes you weak. Sometimes fear makes you precise. Safety isn't just locked doors. It's predictability. Stability. Knowing who has access to your child. And for a long time, none of those things were guaranteed. I learned to stop oversharing. To stop explaining myself. Because explanations become tools. In the wrong hands. My child needed help. Not because he was broken. But because something had broken around him. Appointments. Specialists. Careful conversations. I watched him search my face. before reacting to the world. That's when you realize how deeply children read us. When you go public, you lose control over the narrative. People simplify. They pick sides. They speculate. They judge. Some see a villain. Some see a hero. I see a system that didn't react in time. People told me, think about your reputation. Think about the consequences. Think about the child. I did. That's exactly why I spoke. Because reputation heals. Consequences pass. But unaddressed danger repeats. Publicity is uncomfortable. It exposes you. It invites opinions. But it also creates witnesses. And witnesses change behavior. I wasn't asking for punishment. I was asking for accountability. Power isn't loud. It's persistent. It wears you down. Until compliance feels easier than resistance. I learned that saying no often comes with a price. And that paying it is sometimes the only way forward. Public images are powerful. They protect people. I learned how easily a carefully constructed image can silence uncomfortable truths. And how difficult it is to challenge a narrative people want to believe. Even after everything, the fear doesn't disappear. It changes shape. You stop fearing one moment and start fearing patterns. That's why vigilance remains. Not obsession. Awareness. If you're listening to this and recognizing pieces of your own life, trust that recognition. Control rarely announces itself. It convinces. It conditions. It waits. And leaving doesn't make you cruel. It makes you responsible. I don't want my child to grow up remembering fear. I want him to remember safety, consistency, calm, and the knowledge that his mother chose protection over comfort. I used to think my situation was unique. It isn't. I've heard from others since. Quiet messages. Careful words. Stories that echo mine. That's when I understood why silence is so powerful and so dangerous. I didn't speak because I wanted attention. I spoke because I wanted distance between danger and my child. I didn't speak because I was strong. I spoke because I was out of options. And if this story does anything, I hope it does this. Reminds someone that leaving is not failure. That speaking is not betrayal. And that protecting a child is never something to apologize for. If you've stayed until this moment, thank you for listening. Stories like this aren't easy to hear. They're even harder to live. But silence doesn't end danger. Witnesses do.